The Starlight Barking, Chapter 11. Pongo had never been inside the National Gallery. Picture galleries, he knew, did not admit dogs, which was something he had always regretted as he was fond of pictures. And now, alas, when he could have had the run of the place, it was no moment to look at them. He led his party across the dimly lit entrance hall, up the wide steps, and into a long gallery. The light here was almost as dim as in the entrance hall, but across the gallery was an archway beyond which the light was brighter. Pongo couldn't believe his eyes. There was a horse there, with a rider on it, an upright horse fully awake, and so was the rider. Then the sleepers were waking up. Humans would soon be in charge again. Dogs need not have this tremendous responsibility of deciding their own fate. Then he saw the horse and the rider were only painted in a large picture. They were not real, and yet, somehow, they were real, in a way Pongo couldn't understand. He only knew that they made him remember men and horses very vividly and feel very fond of them. He and all the dogs with him settled down on the polished floor of the gallery. Then Pongo took a vote. He found that only Tommy and the cats had made up their minds. Tommy still wanted to go with Sirius. The cats still wanted to stay on Earth. But after a moment Cadpig said, "I wish to stay. I can't believe the Prime Minister won't miss me." This made a great impression on Cadpig's cabinet, all the members of which now said that, if she stayed, they would. Then Lucky said, "Father, I feel sure all the Dalmatians from Hell Hall will want to do what you and Mother decide to do." All the Dalmatians from Hell Hall at once said, "Hear, hear." Mrs. said, "And of course I shall do what you wish, Pongo." Pongo turned to the general, who said he was an old dog to learn new tricks, but Sirius seemed a decent fellow, and if Tommy wanted to go, not that I hold with people coming here from space. I've always thought space should keep itself. I shall follow my general, said the Jack Russell. "Thanks, lad," said the general, gruffly. Pongo looked at the Staffordshire, who said, "I'm out of my depth, mate. Space sounds very airy-fairy to me, but I must say that bliss stuff was like a good kip by a warm fire, after a slap-up meal. And naturally, I liked the look of Sirius." "Of course you did," thought Pongo, knowing that, to the Staffordshire, Sirius would have looked like a Staffordshire. Cadpig said, "Father, there are far more Dalmatians from Hell Hall than there are dogs in my cabinet, so it's what you decide that will count. Unless, of course, a majority of the dogs in the world disagree with you." "It's no use thinking about that," said Pongo. "All we can do is to make our own choice. How much will you mind if I decide to go?" "I don't know, Father. In a way, I want to go, if I can go with a clear conscience. I only know that I can't decide to leave the Prime Minister, so that leaves it all to me," thought Pongo. "And I just don't know what to do." He was puzzled that he should even consider going off with a star to a star. Even if the Dearleys did not miss him, would not he miss them most terribly? Of course he would. And yet he still felt drawn to the star. What was this mysterious attraction? He had once heard Mrs. Dearley quoting a poem about the desire of the dog for the star had said moth, not dog. But that must have been a slip. Was it, then, natural for dogs to be drawn towards stars? Whoa, if only someone would explain to him and give him some really good advice. He looked toward the painted horse, and wished it could be a real horse who would talk to him. Horses could be very helpful. He remembered the horse that had saved him, and Mrs., and all the puppies they were rescuing, when gypsies had locked them in a field. But the painted horse could do nothing, except look very noble, and somehow, that was a little bit of help. It was at that moment that he heard a dog barking. "Pongo, where are you?" In the entrance hall below. Surely he knew that booming bark? He barked back, "Here, sir," up the stairs, and a couple of seconds later, into the gallery at full tilt came the Great Dane from over toward Hampstead. And not only the Great Dane, riding on his back was a tiny creature, a white kitten. No, more like a white puppy, but somehow it looked too grown up to be a puppy. Could it be a miniature dog? "How splendid that you managed to get here, sir," said Pongo. And the sheepdog, a general recognizing another general, rose, wagging his tail. "Talk about swooshing," said the Great Dane. "Part of the time I seem to fly." "That's the high swoosh," said Mrs. I discovered it. Well, it took me by surprise, and my little friend nearly fell off. By the way, don't mistake him for a puppy. He's full grown and 3 years old. A Chihuahua, ridiculous name for a breed. But he can't help that, can you, Sam? He's my very good friend, sleeps in my bed, and acts as a hot water bottle. Well, Pongo and Mrs., we meet at last face to face. And I know who you are. He wagged his tail at the sheepdog. "We've often sent messages to each other over the twilight barking, and we will again, when this emergency comes to an end. But what end will it come to?" Pongo slipped in quickly. "Do you mean you're in any doubt? Aren't you going to send the star back where it belongs?" "We're not quite sure yet." The Great Dane cut Pongo short. "I knew it. I knew it. I said to Sam. He came out to Hampstead Heath with me. I said, they'll be fooled. All those dogs in Trafalgar Square. Crowds are always fooled. They get so worked up that they can't think for themselves. I know about these things, because I live with a professor who often talks about them. All you dogs are the victims of mass hysteria. Mrs. was shocked. Dogs as well as humans suffer from hysteria. And she never felt it was safe even to mention the word. She said nervously to the Great Dane, "Surely that lovely bliss wasn't hysteria?" "Now I'll tell you about bliss, Mrs.," said the Great Dane. "It was all part of a clever trick. First this serious fellow works us up into enjoying ourselves, and then he plunges us into total darkness. I'll admit even I was scared when the stars went out. And then he appears and lights things up again. Well, worked up a marvelous entrance for himself." "Bliss was more than just enjoying ourselves," said Pongo. "Perhaps it was a bit more," said the Great Dane grudgingly. "The fellow's certainly a very clever trickster." "I didn't feel he was a trickster," said Pongo. "I felt that he loved us. Well, even Sam and I were fooled at first, but we soon found him out when he started changing himself into dogs. To me, he looked like a Great Dane, and to Sam he looked like a Chihuahua. Now, apart from being ridiculous, that's dishonest. I take it that all you dogs saw him as being of your own breed?" There were excited murmurs from all the dogs in the gallery. "But I don't think he meant that to be dishonest," said Pongo. "It was to make us feel he understood us all. You know what humans feel about people who are two-faced," said the Great Dane. "I don't," said Mrs. "I didn't know there were any people with two faces." Pongo explained hurriedly. "It just means, well, people who aren't sincere." "Exactly," said the Great Dane. "And as there are getting on for 100 breeds of dog, Sirius is 100-faced, and if you think that's a sincere thing to be, I don't." Cadpig felt the Great Dane was being a bit bossy, so she said in rather a haughty voice, "If I might speak a word or two." "Who's this?" said the Great Dane, glowering. "My daughter, at present our Prime Minister," said Pongo. The Great Dane's manner became charming. "What, Cadpig? Honored to meet you. My dear, you're a very clever dog. Surely you don't want to go with Sirius?" "As a matter of fact, I don't, but I think you're being unfair to him. He said he wanted to save us from the bomb. Surely that's a real danger? I'm always hearing about it." "So am I," said the Great Dane, "from my professor. But Sirius can't possibly know that his star will be a safe refuge. My professor says the next war's quite likely to be fought in space while we sit down here safely watching it on television. Now it's nearly 2 o'clock. Let's all get ready to say to this fellow, Sirius, go home. Don't you want to, Pongo?" Pongo had begun to feel he did. The loneliness he had felt when Sirius vanished had grown weaker, and his loyalty to the Dearlys had grown stronger. Surely he had never quite felt he could leave them? He even felt a loyalty to the whole world that he had always known. But he couldn't believe that Sirius was a trickster, and he remembered that great sigh he had heard from thousands of dogs when Sirius disappeared. He said quietly, "But it isn't only what I want, sir. I have to decide on behalf of so many other dogs, and I'm nearly sure that most of them wish to join Sirius." "Pongo," said Mrs. "I think some dogs wish to speak to you." Peering into the gallery were 3 dogs of mixed breed. One large, 2 small. All of them looked in poor condition and seemed very nervous. Pongo at once invited them in and, as they drew nearer, he saw that they were pitifully thin. This was particularly noticeable with the largest dog, because his bones were so big. He had a fine head and intelligent eyes, and though his dark coat was now matted, it was easy to see that he could be a handsome dog if well fed and groomed. He came in a little ahead of the other 2, and was obviously the leader. Pongo welcomed all 3 dogs, and asked what they wished to say. The big, bony dog said, "We speak for all the lost dogs. Some are from lost dogs' homes, some are strays, some did not come to London because they could not believe they would have the strength. But those of us who are in Trafalgar Square, over 100 of us, have talked to many dogs who could not be here. As you know, today our thoughts can travel anywhere, and they all feel as we do. You said that any dog who had anything important to say, might come and say it. And to us, this is very, very important." "Then of course you must tell me," said Pongo. He spoke in a kind, encouraging tone, but his heart sank. He had almost been convinced by the Great Dane that he must refuse to go with Sirius. But surely these pitiful creatures would want to. Surely they would wish to escape from their unhappy lives on Earth. "Thank you," said the big bony dog. "I should tell you first that we admire Sirius, and believe in him, and we are deeply grateful for this wonderful day. Some of us had forgotten what it was like not to be hungry, and today we have hardly felt like lost dogs, because, in a way, all dogs have been lost. I mean they have all been on their own with no humans to depend on, so we have not felt envious. Whoa! None of us will ever forget this day that Sirius has given us." "And so you want to go with him?" said Pongo. "Whoa, no," said the big dog, and the 2 smaller lost dogs also said no, in very shrill voices. "But why not?" said Pongo, much astonished. "We are not ready," said said the big lost dog. We want our lives here first. Always there is hope for us. Nearly all strays are taken to lost dogs' homes, and then, very often, kind people come and offer them homes. Most of us can remember homes. Many of those homes weren't good ones, and many of us were turned out, deliberately lost. But we had loved the people who treated us so unkindly, and we want our chance to belong to someone again. You could belong to Sirius, said Pongo. That wouldn't count, said the big lost dog. Everyone would belong to him. We all want someone of our very own. The Great Dane said kindly, and I hope you get someone. You all deserve to. And now, Pongo, hasn't that helped you to make up your mind? It's time you did. It was, indeed. Big Ben had begun to strike too, and at that moment the room was flooded with light. Pongo knew where the light was coming from. Sirius, the blazing star, was back on top of Nelson's column, and as the great clock finished striking, they heard the musical thunder of his voice. I am here, Pongo. Send him away. Pongo, said the Great Dane. Tell him, not yet, said the big lost dog. Pongo, Mrs. and Cadpig led the way to the steps, and down them to the entrance hall, with all the other dogs following. But even when Pongo went out through the doors into the dazzling light, he did not know what he was going to say. Whoa! He knew he must refuse to go with Sirius, but how could he put it? How was he to sound both kind and strong? And when he came face to face with the blazing star, he wondered if he had the strength to say it at all. He did not have to, for Sirius, who could read the thoughts of all dogs, already knew. From the heart of the star came the great voice saying, so the answer is no, and it comes not only from you, all you dogs here in London. I can hear it from all over the world, and I know now that there could not be any other answer. Of all creatures, dogs have lived closest to mankind, and they will never desert mankind. And though I do not think such devotion is deserved, I can admire it, and it is something in men's favor that they can inspire it and, in their way, return it. May you never regret your choice, O dogs of the world. The Great Dane said, Sir, I have misjudged you, but you were quite right to call me 100-faced, said Sirius. And when I am back in space, in all my loneliness, I shall comfort myself by being every breed of dog there is. I shall imagine it, and imagination can be more real than reality, though that's something even I can't explain. And now we must be businesslike. The deep musical voice became brisk. All dogs must be home before sunrise, because then you will all be ordinary dogs, without power to swoosh or to open doors. Some of us live farther away than others, said Pongo. That will be allowed for. All dogs will reach home in time, provided they swoosh steadily, and on no account turn back. Remember, the special powers given to you will only last just long enough to get you home. But there's no need to panic. All crowds must break up in an orderly way. Those on the outside must leave first. Pongo, you and your party must wait until Trafalgar Square is cleared. But will dogs know their way home in the dark? Asked Mrs. anxiously. All they will have to do is to think forward thoughts toward their homes, and swoosh steadily. Now I must leave you. I have a longer journey than any of you. Pongo saw that the star, though still brilliant, was growing smaller. He called loudly, Shall we ever see you again, Sirius? You can always see me in the dog days of high summer, when I shine my brightest, if you remember to look. Whoa, we will, barked very many dogs. And then, as the star grew smaller and smaller, every dog in and around Trafalgar Square barked, Goodbye, Sirius, goodbye, goodbye. The voice that came from the dwindling star was now little more than a murmur, and then every dog heard a strange sound which was like a soft summer breeze stirring the leaves of many trees. What was that, Pongo? Asked Mrs. Pongo said, Perhaps it was the sigh of a lonely star. Now there was only a tiny point of light high on Nelson's column, and in another second even that had vanished. Trafalgar Square was in total darkness. Then the lights of London came back, and quite ordinary stars were twinkling in the sky, if any stars are ordinary. And the Great Dane and the sheep dog, speaking at the same moment, told Pongo it was time for action, and all dogs must be hurried on their way. Then you two generals do the hurrying, please, said Pongo, who was feeling very much upset. And so, he saw, were Mrs. and Cadpig, who kept saying, Oh, poor Sirius. Whoa, poor lonely Sirius. So Pongo comforted Mrs. and Patch comforted Cadpig, and the two generals very loudly told dogs how to get out of the square. And by the time it was cleared, Pongo was quite himself again, which he certainly needed to be, if he was to get his large party safely home. He hoped Sirius had made allowance for the extra swooshing power needed for the tractor, with Tommy and the cats on it. We must go as fast as we can, said Mrs. It would be dreadful if Tommy didn't get home by sunrise. It would be dreadful if any of us didn't get home by sunrise, said Pongo. But don't worry, Mrs. dear, we shall. But would they all? Pongo earnestly hoped that Mrs. would not suddenly remember something which all the excitement had driven out of her mind. For if she did, he would never get her to leave London. Roly Poly was not with them. Where was Roly Poly?